by 352,000 from a year earlier. A nationwide retail campaign in South Korea to boost consumption wraps up with sales of around $22 million. The government says it was a success. And the government is considering whether to require people arriving from 2 more countries to submit negative COVID-19 test results before being allowed to enter. Korea is dealing with a growing number of cases imported from abroad. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea is looking at requiring people arriving from 2 more countries to submit COVID-19 test results before being allowed in. Those are the Philippines and Uzbekistan. A decision is expected in the coming hours. Already on the list are Bangladesh, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan. South Korea is stepping up its restrictions because imported cases have recently outnumbered local transmissions. Of the 39 new cases confirmed on Wednesday, 28 were imported. Total cases now stand at 13,551. There were no additional deaths, meaning the death toll remains at 289. Another sign of a potential working vaccine from the U.S. company Moderna. It says its vaccine produced antibodies to the coronavirus in all the patients it tested in an initial safety trial, 45 of them in total. Following the news, Moderna's stock rose on Tuesday by more than 16%. Late-stage trials of the vaccine will start on July 27th with 30,000 participants. They'll get a dose of 100 micrograms on the first day and another 29 days later. Some patients will get a placebo. The Seoul Metropolitan Government is going to form a team to investigate the sexual harassment allegations against the city's late mayor, Park Won-soon. Any criminal probes by the police had to be dropped because the accused person died, but the city can do an investigation of its own. The team will consist of government officials and non-government organizations, such as women's support groups and legal support groups. Specific plans for the probe will come after consultations with those outside organizations. The pandemic has wiped out untold numbers of jobs around the world, some that'll come back and some that won't. Here in Korea, unemployment last month was the highest it's been for the month of June since records began. Ji-young has the details.
Due to the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, South Korea has seen a 4-month-long downward trend in the number of people in work. This is the first time since between October 2009 and January 2010, in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, that the figure has been lower on year for 4 months in a row. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the number of employed people was around 27,055,000, down 352,000 from the same month a year earlier. The unemployment rate in June was 4.3%, the highest for the month of June since records began in 1999. The number of unemployed for the month of June also reached an all-time high since 1999. Apart from people aged over 60, all age brackets saw a decrease in the number of people employed and the employment rate. Breaking it down by sector, the biggest job losses were found in the restaurant and lodging sectors, which saw 186,000 job losses, down 7.9% on year. But an expert says the employment rate will improve this fall.
Number of, new kind of discoveries of COVID patients decline a little bit. If that continues, down to the fall, I think significant pickup in the manufacturing, significant pickup in service industry will be expected.
Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki said in a social media post on Wednesday that he's worried about the situation and is taking it seriously, but added that it is showing signs of recovery when compared to April and May, as the size of the decrease is getting smaller. The finance minister also said he'll try to speed up projects to create more than 570,000 jobs in the third COVID-19 supplementary budget, as well as accelerate the Korean New Deal projects. Ji-young, Arirang News.
Now, one sector of the economy that's been thriving in the pandemic is data and AI. Companies in South Korea are planning to hire more talent to respond to an increasing demand for non-contact services. Yoon Jung-min reports.
This local data company provides online business platforms and cloud services using big data and AI technology. The company has recently hired more employees on the back of an increase in demand for non-contact services amid the COVID-19 outbreak. It expects its business to grow further, with data services playing a key role in the digital economy. But rather than build another branch in Seoul or another major city where digital companies and human resources are concentrated, it has decided to build a branch in Gangwon-do province and hire local people.
Around 1,500 employees are working at our company. Among them, around 850 employees are working here at the Gangwon branch, and half of them are locals. Talented workers from different fields are working here.
Among the recently employed are young local people with a deep knowledge of data and computer science.
Currently, I'm working for the data platform architect under the platform business division. I'm also from Gangwon-do province, and it's good that I don't have to move to Seoul or other cities to work where most data or AI companies are based.
The digital economy is expected to play a greater role in the years to come and be a major job creator, not just here in Korea, but globally. Another local AI and big data company is a key player in creating new jobs, both at home and abroad. The company is currently working with the southern city of Gwangju to find more talented young job seekers, as well as hiring more at overseas branches.
The number of employees at our company has increased 40% during the past 3 years. We also built a branch in Vietnam 11 years ago and have started employing more people there. It's the same for other branches in the US and Japan. Also, we have signed an MOU with Gwangju and plan to hire 100 workers from there by next year.
South Korea aims to create some 1.9 million jobs through the Korean New Deal, which focuses on the digital and green economy. With an increasing demand for non-contact services, industry watchers say data, AI, and other digital sectors will be one of the fastest growing industries globally in the post-pandemic era. As a result, they say the industry will require more manpower. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The South Korean government says the nationwide retail campaign that wrapped up this past Sunday, the Donghaeng Sale, was a success, boosting consumption by $22 million. The Ministry of SMEs and Startups said Wednesday that more than 10,000 kinds of products were sold through non-contact platforms like live-streamed shows and home shopping channels. Sales at traditional markets also jumped more than 10% compared to the average. Also, the amount of credit card payments increased by around 5% compared to the previous year. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, thank you as always for coming on.
Happy to be here.
Well, U.S. stocks had a strong recovery overnight with second quarter earnings coming out from major companies and hope for a recovery in the economy, not to mention news of a vaccine. What's the story in the global markets today?
Okay, well, as you mentioned, the U.S. markets all had a very strong Tuesday yesterday. Dow went up by 2.13%, S&P went up by 1.34%, Nasdaq went up by 0.94%. And the reason, well, partially there's still a disconnect between real economy and the stock market. So there is still some concerns about the bubble there. The early earning reports are coming out. The results are mixed. The banks are where the investors are keeping their eye on right now. There are some banks like JP Morgan Chase, which did better than expected, but some have cut dividends like Wells Fargo. But right now, the expectation on these earnings are so bad that any good news, I think, is overblowing the market. Any good news has a larger impact than it should. And then some other reasons why the market improved. There was an announcement by a Fed member yesterday that they will continue the expansionary monetary policy, and there's a lot of expectations that the Congress will extend the unemployment benefits and give further stimulus to the economy. So that is working on the optimistic feelings by the investors. And not the U.S. The U.S. situation is worse than ever on coronavirus, but the rest of the world seems to be starting on a solid path to recovery. So that is also somewhat feeding into the optimistic side of the market. And of course, there's the good news of vaccine. Some of the trials seems to be going very well, but that news hit after the U.S. stock market was done for the day. So that affects foreign markets, but not necessarily the United States market, though that may give further rise to the U.S. stock market today. The European markets, again, following the U.S. market as well as the vaccine news, they're up. The Japanese market was also up today, but the Chinese markets, the Shanghai and Hong Kong, does not seem to be doing that well, possibly because they're having a lot of flooding problems right now. And Kospi and Kosdaq, they also rose. Kospi rose by 0.84% today, Kosdaq by 0.37%. That partially represents the optimism from the U.S. markets. I think it also reflects partially the New Deal announcement by President Moon yesterday and the vaccine optimism that we saw on the Japanese and European markets as well. So overall, fairly good day today, except for the Chinese markets.
Well, Professor Young, we've seen oil prices coming back up the past couple of months. That means more expensive imports for Korea. But then we have one of Korea's main exports, semiconductors, fetching lower prices abroad. What's going on there?
Okay, well, let's start with the oil prices. Yes, the rising oil prices mean bad news for Korea's trade accounts, but it may signal some optimism because it implies that the global economy is coming back. The consumption of oil, which can lead to consumption of other products, it seems the global economy is recovering. So that is probably the reason why the oil prices are rising. So there is some silver cloud in that particular lining. And then for the semiconductors, well, the semiconductor prices are down, but the volumes are up for Korean exports. So Korean semiconductor exports are down only by 0.3% for the first half of the year. Now, the reason why the prices are rising is twofold. First is that for the first half of the year, because United States and Europe have been in a lockdown where people were working at home or trapped at home, they're doing a lot of activities using the internet. So not only there has been increases in sales of computers and tablets, but also companies and media companies like Netflix, Disney Plus, they have been expanding their servers and their networks. So that means there's a lot of demand for semiconductors. And then in the first quarter, there has been a lot of hoarding of semiconductors. After the global users of semiconductors saw what happened in China, the production shut down, they started hoarding a lot of semiconductors, and that accounts for a lot of price rise earlier in the year. So that accounts for the rise in prices for the first half of the year. But the prices right now for the last few weeks have been dropping. And that's because, well, in most countries, lockdown is now over, so they do not need to invest as much in these servers anymore. And then as I mentioned, there has been a lot of hoarding, so the semiconductor users now have a lot of stockpile of semiconductors that they can use for the rest of the year. So Samsung and SK are actually somewhat concerned about their business for the second half of the year because they expect the price to continue to drop.
All right, well, we're almost out of time, but we do see foreign direct investment in Korea down in the first half of the year. What does that mean for the local economy?
Okay, well, the government is emphasizing that, yes, the FDI is down, but it's not as down as other countries. The UNCTAD, the UN organization, estimates that the global FDI will fall by 40%. U.S. during the first quarter fell by 35%. Japan in the first quarter fell by 80%, but Korea only fell by 23.9% on a realized investment basis. And they note that there has been successful FDI in electronic commerce, IT industries, medicine, R&D, and logistics services. So they're actually framing this as a fairly optimistic news. But still, it is true that investment, not only FDI, but domestic investment has been down in Korea even before the coronavirus. So we really have to focus on why are people not investing in Korea, not only foreign investors, but domestic investors. And we need to make businesses more profitable. We need to make the economic environment more attractive for investment. This goes for FDI as well as domestic investment. It's the same disease, looking at it from two different views.
All right, Professor Young, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Thank you.
The South Korean capital is cleaning up its air. According to the city of Seoul, so far this year, the number of old diesel cars registered in the city has declined by 16,000. Old diesel cars are considered one of the biggest causes of fine dust pollution. Car owners get subsidies from the government to replace them with newer ones. Old diesels are also banned from driving in certain central parts of the capital. The city says the level of fine dust from last December to this March was down on year by around 20%. That does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.